This is Darth Matthew, host of the Star Wars Generations and Superhero Ethics podcast, and I find your lack of membership disturbing. You can free yourself from the ads of those rebel scum by going to theethicalpanda.com and clicking join for $5 a month, $55 a year. No more ads, only the episodes, just as the Emperor intended.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Star Wars Generations podcast. Friends, we're only a few weeks away from Maul Shadow Lord coming to us. And today we're going to start off our kind of primer coverage talking about Maul in Legends canon. There's been a lot of great stuff about him in more recent books, and we're going to get you up to speed on that, as well as everything that happens to him in the Clone Wars and Rebels TV shows next week. Today we're going to be talking about the Legends book that were written about him, and we're doing it with probably the foremost Legends canon expert that I know. Jonah Kellman. He is a friend of mine, a colleague from the Judge world. He's actually the, what is your official title? Director, Generalissimo?
I gave myself the title Program Director.
Okay. I'm going to call you High Chancellor.
That works for me.
He is the head of the Star Wars Unlimited, which is the TCG Judge program, which I'm a part of, so I get to work with him a lot through that. But more than anything, I have known him as a Legends expert. He is the host of the currently on hiatus, but if you poke him enough, maybe we'll get it back going, podcast.
Just take a little bit more free time.
The Archives Are Incomplete, in which he has been going through and reading a whole bunch of the Legends canon books. And so I know he was the person who I wanted to get on for this episode. So Jonah, how are we doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Matthew. How are you?
I'm good. And I, as those watching the video have already seen, when I ask you about these books, you have them because I believe you own every single book that was published during the Legends era, correct?
So I have all of the Legends canon novels, and I think at this point, like 95-ish% of the YA books, and then like 70 or 80% of the old Marvel and Dark Horse graphic novels pre-Disney. So most of them, yeah. And
just for those who aren't clear, the Legends canon is all of the books that were published. Some of them came out right around the time of the original trilogy movies, novelizations, and an additional novel. And then you had more books being published all throughout the time of the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars show and things like that, right up to the point where George Lucas sold the franchise to Disney, at which point Disney then decided that Legends was great, but they were going to... Say again?
Oh, there's a bug in my head, and I think, so you said up to when it was sold to Disney, and this is a tangent. Hi, folks, if you don't know me, tangents are one of my many specialities.
This is true.
The graphic novels at Dark Horse that were in warehouses that had not yet been distributed, when Disney got the property, they were ordered to be destroyed. And I believe a big chunk of the books that had been printed and published and sent to distributors, but not yet sold to retailers, were Darth Maul stories from like...
Oh, interesting.
I think it was like at the climax of that arc, and they're like, well, it's a new canon now, and so all of this is no longer legal. Please destroy it. And a handful of them are out in the wild, but when I was looking for them, I think they were like $1,000 each, and that was like 5 years ago before the collector's market went wild. Pretty sure it was actually Darth Maul books.
Well, if you want to start a GoFundMe, we can try and raise the money for you to purchase some of these and then get you back. But for now, I think there's still enough to talk about. And for anyone who's wondering, well, if this is now the old canon, it's not what the new shows are based in, why are we talking about it? You can watch the video and see Jonah getting very upset at that comment. One thing I think that we've seen and has been actually directly acknowledged by some of the creators of some of the more recent shows is that more and more some of the Star Wars properties, including both novels, but especially some of the TV shows, have been drawing quite a lot of elements from the Legends canon. Acolyte, I think, is a show that did this quite a lot. Some other things as well, especially some of the novels. The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, which is sort of a history book of the written in this universe, which is wonderful, draws a lot on Legends canon. So I think talking about what we learn about the character in Legends I think it has a great way of better understanding this character and what we're going to see from them in this new show coming out. Because clearly the people create whatever the idea about what is officially canon. Clearly, the people creating New Star Wars are aware of Legends. They're reading Legends. It's part of the discussion, and it's influencing and inspiring them in many ways.
Yeah, one of the ways that I think about Legends, it's inverse. Legends is the true canon. Disney canon is the no longer canon stuff, at least in my little head. But whatever brings you joy brings you joy. But the way I have come to think about Legends and all these other stories is that's what they are. They're stories, right?
Right.
And stories can be inaccurate. They can be accurate. One of the ways I talk about Legends canon is the discovery of the Death Star plans pre A New Hope. And in the Legends canon, I can name 5 suicide missions to get the Death Star plans, to send the plans off to a ship out in space that they don't know the identity of, off the top of my head. I think there are a dozen. And either that means they're all true and happen sequentially, or one of them is true, maybe 2. But everybody else was like, there's this huge mythical moment, and I knew a guy who said he was a part of it. Let me tell you the story of Senator Garmbel Iblis meeting Talon Card and how they outwitted Thrawn. And you're like, okay, that's some big names you're throwing around there, buddy. And first of all, very good story. Also, doesn't directly contradict other things, but similarly, these books, like Lockdown, I'm just going to have my props with me. There we go. Not as much reflection. This doesn't contradict anything that's said anywhere else, mostly. I mean, if they're like he was only trained on one planet, then it might contradict it, but it's like a 2-week period on a space station where everybody else dies. So that's not quite accurate, but it doesn't have a lasting impact on the external canon. And so this can be true alongside the rest of the Disney canon. It's just what your heart wants.
Yeah, I hear that. I think that's a really good way of thinking about it, because remembering that a lot of the stories we get, it's not the complete story. There's a lot of holes to fill in. And also, we don't always get reliable narrators. The Clone Wars TV show, I think, for example, is completely built on the idea that it's being told to you by Admiral Yularen, who, later becomes part of the Empire, and is definitely someone who is, maybe not the most reliable narrator. Like Clone Wars, the TV show, can be seen as a lot of Republic propaganda. The other way that I think about it a lot, in terms of more of the meta view outside of the story itself, is, to me, it's kind of like how in Marvel, there's a Marvel comic book arc called Civil War. And then people wrote the movie, Captain America Civil War, that was clearly deeply inspired by it, but was not trying to be canonical with that comic book. It was a different story. And then since then, there have been other comic books that are canonical to the MCU itself, as distinct from the Marvel comic book. And I think in many ways, Legends is kind of a similar thing, and that it's just that we're getting more and more people saying, oh yeah, let me go reread that Legends canon. And you mentioned, for example, the character of Thrawn. He has, of course, now shown up in Disney canon in both books and TV shows. He was really the star antagonist of not technically the first of the Legends books, but what are often thought of as the first of the Legends books, and the first to really take off the Heir to the Empire series. Similarly, Darth Plagueis, a character who is mentioned briefly in Revenge of the Sith as the legend of Darth Plagueis the Wise, as though it happened quite some time ago.
Legend.
There is a novel that Jonah is currently holding up, because I have to keep reminding him this is mostly radio, but yay, YouTube, check it out. And in that novel, it's that Darth Plagueis is Sidious's direct mentor and Sith master. And, of course, in the show Acolyte, the character of Darth Plagueis shows up there again in a way I think very inspired by that novel. So that kind of sets the overall tone. Let's talk about Darth Maul in Legends canon. And first, of course, one of the defining things that we're going to be talking about a lot, because it's a thing that raises a lot of questions, is in the first movie of the prequels, Phantom Menace, to all intents and purposes, Obi-Wan Kenobi kills Darth Maul.
Sure, but did you see a body?
I saw 2 parts of a body.
Yeah, and I saw a body fall down the shaft of the Death Star, and yet, somehow...
True. Exactly. Somehow. And in next week's episode, we're going to talk to you about how it was that Maul, for people who haven't seen some of that stuff and are wondering, like, I'm excited for this Maul show, but I don't get it. Wasn't Maul killed by Obi-Wan? We're going to talk about all that. The Legends books about Maul are all set in the time either before or during Phantom Menace. And so all of this is within the story of that where his story ends at the Battle of Naboo, where he defeats Qui-Gon Jinn and kills Qui-Gon Jinn and is then defeated by Obi-Wan. So talk to me about kind of the overall picture you get of Maul in these books.
Oh, well, see, I knew you were just going to start by hitting me with questions. I wasn't expecting such a broad question to begin. But, I mean, his character is one of ambition and hunger. He, like all Sith or Sith acolytes, wants power. But he is, compared to most Sith, actually, I find him relatively subservient. There is a lot of him just being like, I'll do that, master, right? Whereas the other Sith we see, particularly interacting with Palpatine, give Palps a lot more pushback. Maul is just like, you got it, boss, whatever you want me to do, right, I will go do it. He very much feels like an attack dog. And that's referenced in one of these books I have on hand, in a conversation between, by the way, spoilers abound. In case you were not expecting spoilers abound, spoilers abound. But I think Darth Plagueis and Palpatine talk about Darth Maul. Now, how could Darth Plagueis, Darth Sidious, and Darth Maul coexist with the rule of 2? And Plagueis learns about Palpatine's apprentice Maul and is like, hey, what's up with that? You planning on killing me anytime soon? Palpatine's answer is, of course not. I would never. Maul certainly does not deserve the title of Darth. He is not a true Sith. However, if we need somebody who is powerful, can go murder a gang on his own, and is somebody that we can trust absolutely, yeah, it would be my apprentice. And sure, right, I'll give him the title of Darth to make him like wag his tail and not bite me for a couple more days, but he's not a real Sith. Right. Which is, that's fast. I haven't put this together, but when they're talking about how there are 2 in Phantom Menace, after Maul has been defeated, there are in fact 2, Plagueis and Sidious. They just think they've got it down to 1. Then, of course, Palpatine takes care of Plagueis, but that's enough. Anyways, Maul here is very subservient, very much an attack dog.
And the subservient part feels really relevant to this idea of him, whether or not he is a true Sith, because one thing that we see in a number of the books, Darth Plagueis being one of the best examples of this, but also the Darth Bane books and some others, is that part of that idea of there can be only 2 is, and you'll correct my exact wording, but that there are 1 to display the power and 1 to crave it.
I believe it's hold
the power, the other to crave it. And part of the idea is that the apprentice wants to learn from the master, but the entire idea is that one day the apprentice will be strong enough to take down the master, and that they are, so on some level they should always be kind of waiting and watching for when is their master going to turn their back so they can stab them in it. And that's not Darth Maul in the slightest. Like, in Darth Plagueis and in some of the other books, we hear about Sidious already starting to think about when can he take Plagueis down, when is Plagueis going to be weak. We see that with Darth Janna and Darth Bane early on. Maul seems like he is not in. I don't think we see anything from him in these books, certainly in the Phantom Menace, that tells me that he is actively thinking that one day he might take down Sidious.
Yeah. There's not a lot of long-term planning in Maul.
Right.
He does have some cunning in him.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just pure aggression. In Lockdown, so general plot of Lockdown is Darth Maul gets sent to a prison space station. He needs to get a MacGuffin for Palpatine. He needs to get information on where it is, figure out where it is, all while being a prisoner in a gladiatorial prison that makes no sense. I have questions, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. That's really the entire plot. Then the space station blows up, and it has no impact on the larger plot of Star Wars at all, other than Palpatine gets his MacGuffin. And in that, one of the things that Maul does is he gets two gangs to turn on their gang leaders and follow him. And so there are traits of him being commander and him having this sly machinations, but he's not a charismatic manipulator like Palpatine is. He's a little bit more brute force, even in his manipulations of people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's definitely, if you think about it in Dungeons & Dragons terms, you can roll a persuasion roll or an intimidation roll. And often either one will suffice depending on which one you're better at. Maul has maxed out intimidation, persuasion not so much.
And most of the time it's roll intimidation with strength, not roll intimidation with charisma.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think that's a good example. I think similarly in the two that I read summaries of the others, and of course, well, actually, let me back up a second. Let's just talk about the full overview.
Sure.
So there's Darth Plagueis, which we've discussed a bunch, which is really about.
God, it's so good.
It's about, I think it's one of the best books out there. We're saying that all these books are interesting and relevant. I'm not necessarily saying all of them are good, but Darth Plagueis I think is definitely a very good book. It's about. It's basically the whole arc of Sidious up to the Phantom Menace, including also Plagueis before he finds Sidious. And so it gives a lot of great background into the dark side and how all that works. It also starts to show the fall of Count Dooku in ways I really love, that Tales of the Jedi changed and I didn't agree with. So that's probably one of the best of the books. There's Lockdown, which you just mentioned. There's Saboteur, which is a short story really. And it's funny, I read it 3 days ago and the details are almost completely escaping me, but it is a similar thing where basically there are two different groups that are fighting over mining ability on a fairly random planet. But the point is that what they want, what Sidious wants, and then Maul helps to make happen, is for the two of them to fight with each other enough that really they have to merge because neither one of them is strong enough to subsist on its own, and now they have to turn to the Trade Federation.
Yeah.
And so as part of the we're doing machinations to build up the Trade Federation.
Yeah. It ties into the novel The Cestus Deception, which is a story about Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon discovering the machinations of the Trade Federation before Naboo. But right. If you haven't read that, you're just like, yep, this is a planet that exists. Sure. If you want to read a whole other novel, it'll tell you why this planet is important.
Yeah. And then there's one I was just mentioning also, Shadow Assassin, which is really about him. It is, I think it's what it's called, right?
Shadow Hunter?
Shadow Hunter, thank you. He's referred to as an assassin frequently.
Yes.
But in this is set very close before the events of Phantom Menace. And in it, one of the Neomodians who's been working with Sidious decides to go on the run and is planning to basically be a snitch and to tell the Jedi or tell the Republic about the plans for the Trade Federation to invade Naboo, and that this guy named Darth Sidious is behind it. And so the story is about Darth Maul being sent to hunt him down, and a Padawan kind of getting in his way. And there's a number of times during some of these books where you listen to one of the, someone in a movie says this has never happened. And then there's a whole bunch of times where a couple people see that it is just about happened, but apparently it's technically not. And in this regard, what I mean is that because in Phantom Menace, Darth Maul reveals himself as a Sith. There's a number of people who see him doing very Sith things in this book, as well as some others.
How many of them survive?
I think at least the Jedi Padawan does. No, you're right. Okay, no.
My favorite part of that, God. Yeah, how much do we care about spoilers? Are we just ruining the twist?
Yeah, go for it.
One of my favorite things is one of the people who has this information almost gets away from Maul. And he's like, I am dying, I am bleeding out, but I have found somebody who I think I can trust. This is information about the imminent invasion of Naboo. I happen to be on a space station with the Senator of Naboo. Let me hand this critical information to Senator Palpatine. I'm sure he'll take good care of it. And as we mentioned, this is a full novel. It is replicated in the Darth Plagueis novel over the course of a page and a half. It's Palpatine finds out about the problem, sends Maul to get it, finds out that Maul has mostly done it, and then finds out that Maul, in fact, did not succeed in getting the data back and stopping everybody because the guy did hand it to somebody in a position of power. Luckily for the Sith, it all worked out. But, oh boy.
Yeah. And it does put another interesting twist onto what Maul is doing in Phantom Menace, because in that, the Phantom Menace mission is specifically set up in the Darth Plagueis book behind the scenes as this is your opportunity to make amends, to show me that you're still worthy.
Yeah.
And to me, again, like, these are interesting novels. I think if people want to read them, they definitely should. But I think what's mostly important here to me is, what are we learning about Maul and his relation to the Sith and his relation to Darth Sidious? Because as we're going to talk about next week, by the time this show exists, Maul he not only has refound himself, and it's not called Darth Maul, it is Maul, Shadow Lord. He is rebuilding his life outside of the Sith, and he carries kind of a grudge against the Sith. And part of that's for stuff that happens in Clone Wars, but a lot of it, I think, is how much he feels betrayed and how much he feels like he was used and that he was never. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about today, is that's what these books really dive into.
He played with the Sith. He didn't expect to get used and betrayed. That's what you're signing up for.
I mean, he was basically groomed.
Yeah,
he was adopted by Palpatine as a 2-year-old, and like he's raised in a cult. I don't think we can expect him to have sort of outside understanding of maybe this person who has been the only authority figure or parental figure in your life. Maybe he doesn't have your best interests at heart.
Yeah.
Well, and certainly one thing we see in those books is it is not a loving relationship, and it is an incredibly abusive relationship, in the kind of way that, again, makes cult-like behavior very likely. He tortures Maul on a number of occasions, and granted, that to some extent that is just Sith training, but it does seem very much like Sidious is trying to break this guy of any will, doing a lot of negging, we might call it today, but in really extreme ways of, like, Maul kind of strikes me as like the broken dog, who just, the very thought of rebelling is just never going to occur to him.
The vicious broken attack dog. Yeah, that is exactly who Maul is lining up to Phantom Menace.
Right.
Something that I find interesting, though, is that, I mean, of course, Maul, when he returns, lives in the underworld and the Outer Rim and out of the major sight lines of the galaxy, because the Sith don't like him, the Jedi don't like him, and that means 99% of the galaxy don't like him. But the stories that we have about him, from Shadowhunter, from Lockdown, and even from, what was it? One of the short stories, Restraint, which is a strange title to give your Sith warrior. he has links in all of those to various underworld groups. He has connections to the Black Sun. He has connections to the Hutts. He has connections to a couple of other gangs. He has connections to Death Watch. And so it's not super surprising that when he comes back, he's like, okay, well, the world that I was given was acting as an enforcer for the Sith, particularly in underworld environments. And so seeing him return there and being like, okay, this is where I can find my people, this place of other broken people who are ostracized by the galaxy. It comes together in a way that I think really makes a lot of sense if you accept that he somehow returned, which I do, because everybody somehow returns in Star Wars.
Yeah. It's like comic books, and that unless you literally see the head move from the body, death is pretty variable.
Right. If you don't see the body, they're alive. If you do see the body, it's 50-50.
Yeah. And his body is 50-50. Never mind.
That's the best thing about little Lego minifigure Darth Maul, because you could reenact that scene, and other scenes it's really hard to reenact, like popping an arm out of a Lego minifigure, really painful to do as a kid. Taking the legs off and cutting Darth Maul in half, very easy to do.
For those concerned about Jonah's childhood, he is in therapy. Do not worry. I have no knowledge, but let me read a passage actually from Shadowhunter that I think is a really great illustration of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It was impossible even to conceive of a time when he had not been enthralled to Darth Sidious. He knew that he had come originally from a world called Iridonia, that's later changed to Dathomir, but same idea. But knowing that was like knowing that the atoms composing his body had originally been born in the primordial galactic furnaces that had forged the stars. The knowledge was interesting in a remote academic way, but no more than that. He had no interest whatsoever in learning any more about his past or his homeworld. As far as he was concerned, his life began with Lord Sidious, and if his master ordered an end to his life, Maul would accept that judgment with no argument.
Yeah. Like, I think the phrase is he's cooked.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see, like, we're talking about him, how he has blinders on and he doesn't know what's happening. And I think there's actually a really interesting parallel in his killer, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the other Jedi that we follow, Anakin and Ahsoka namely, they make their own judgments, whereas Obi-Wan toes the company line. He's just like, look, if the Jedi Order tells me to do something, they're telling me to do it for the right reasons. And in a very similar place, Maul is, if Palpatine tells me to do something, I say how high.
And while Obi-Wan grew up in what I think you could describe as a much more benevolent cult, and maybe less of a cult specifically, but he has no memory, as later books establish, he has no memory of his life or his family before being with the Jedi. He was literally raised by the Jedi. It's all he knows. So yeah, I think it's a very important parallel. And as we'll be discussing next week, there's a lot of ways in which their two stories intertwine, and in which Maul kind of really fixates on Obi-Wan as a fundamental figure in his life, and will keep coming back to him in a number of ways.
Okay, if somebody cut you in half, would you fixate on them? Like,
the F-train took out my leg, but I have no problem riding it today. But
I think that's different than a person being plastered on propaganda posters as the hero of the Republic.
That's fair. That's also fair. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not blaming him for being obsessed with Obi-Wan. Like, he's, the sarcasm, the flowing locks, like, he's pretty obsessible, but it is definitely a thing there. So let's talk about what Maul knows about the Sith, because as you said, like, he doesn't seem to know what his purpose is supposed to be under the rule of two. Is your understanding that Sidious gives him a pretty, like, he basically is teaching him what Sidious wants him to know about the Sith?
Oh yeah,
not by any means the full picture.
100%. Like, the picture of the Sith that I think Palpatine is giving Maul is essentially what a lot of people think of the Sith as if they just watch the movies, which is bad guys with red swords who kill people. That's what Palpatine sells Maul. It's not, hey, so this is a thing that we've been working on for a few centuries now, and our real end game is to take over the galaxy through political and financial machinations. Not conquer the galaxy through force of arms, which is your specialty. You, of course, are going to be very helpful in your bull in a china shop way when we are working fully in a china shop. Like that's...
Maul thinks the job is to break all the china. Sidious knows the job is to get hired to clean up all the china because Maul broke it all.
Right. And to be fair, all of the jobs that he's given are break stuff, steal things, cause problems.
Right.
And very good at that. And he does get a couple of like sub goals of suborn this individual or like get this person to do something against their will. But as we mentioned earlier, he relies on intimidation checks and just brazening his way through things rather than more subtle arts.
Right. Yeah, he is not the person who like is going to be ever part of the Republic Senate machinations. And I think I've always thought that the choice that the next person who Palpatine chooses of Count Dooku is really interesting because he is so much the exact opposite. Count Dooku is a political figure whose primary way of assisting the Sith plan is helping to foment the Civil War, the Clone Wars, and doing all of these things. No one knows Darth Maul exists except for during the time of the Phantom Menace, and they all think he's gone again. Everybody knows who Count Dooku is. He's a very public figure. He works mostly above the board. He's doing all these kind of things. Talk about how Dooku really represents a very different direction for what Palpatine is doing.
I mean, Dooku isn't brainwashed. Well, he is because he was raised a Jedi. But he's somebody who looked past his blinders and stepped free and was like, right, what the Jedi are doing is morally incorrect. And while I don't believe in what the Sith are doing, like the Sith code isn't true, but the ends do justify the means. And freeing the galaxy from the tyranny of the Republic and the Jedi is a thing worth doing. And I think there are arguments for that. But his ways of going about it are not correct and resulting in the Empire. Not a great thing. I don't support what Dooku had happen to the galaxy. But even like the combat approach between Maul and Dooku is very particular. Maul, of course, uses his signature double-bladed lightsaber, which is the coolest thing ever the first time you see it. It's so cool. But if we go back to the Darth Bane book set several thousand years ago, Bane is talking with his master, I want to say Kasim. Nobody knows, nobody cares except for me, but I'm pretty sure it's Kasim, who talks about using a double-bladed lightsaber. And the reason Kasim uses it, or Maul's lightsaber instructor, is people don't know how to fight against it. And even though it limits your abilities to attack because you have, another saber pointed at you if you just thrust it at your opponent forward, your opponents don't know how to fight against it. And so it confuses them and gives you opportunities to take advantage of their way of thinking.
Yeah. It's an intimidation tactic. As much as anything.
It's intimidation, but also strategic, because you don't know how to defend against it because you haven't trained against it. The reason Darth Maul uses a double-bladed lightsaber is not that. It's so that he has two swords. It's so that he can hit twice as much. And the next person to take his role as apprentice to Palpatine, Dooku, also has a slightly different lightsaber. His lightsaber hilt is curved, which does the same thing that the double-bladed lightsaber does for Kasim, which is give slightly different angles of attack. He's just a few degrees off, and those few degrees can matter. Dooku is a very precise duelist. I think he very much represents the, like, in a fight, he would try to win in a single stroke. He will wait, and then he will strike, and then he will win. Whereas Maul will just jump in as soon as he realizes that you're there, ignite both blades, and see if he can overwhelm you.
I mean, just the word duelist. Maul is an assassin. He wants to attack from the shadows. He wants his prey to never notice them. Dooku wants to have a duel. You know, he says that both to Anakin and Obi-Wan and also to Yoda, you know, like, shall we, you know, fight in the way of the lightsaber masters, whatever it is. I forget the exact wording. But, you know, he likes the honorable combat and, like, winning at the ancient art of sword fighting, of lightsaber battling. And I think even just their names as Darths is very significant because, you know, Darth Maul, you can think of Maul in two ways. It can be a bear attack, like an animal mauls you, or you can think of a maul as a huge hammer. Like, it is a blunt, neither of these are finesse attacks.
The third option is a shopping center.
Well, yes, but that's not MAU all. But although here in Minnesota, home of the largest shopping center in the world, Mall of America, yes. But both they're brute force physical attacks. Tyranus, a tyrant, is a ruler. A tyrant doesn't fight you one-on-one. The whole point of a tyrant is that they have secret police, and they have there's layers and layers and layers between the peasants and the people being oppressed and the tyrant. And, you know, the tyrant never gets their hands dirty dealing with, you know, the people on the street. They have people for that. And I think just those two names are very significant of the very different roles they're supposed to play in Palpatine's plans.
Yeah, I mean, you can also see it in the jobs that they're sent to handle. Dooku gets sent to convince a planet senator to betray their previous plans, to betray an alliance, to allocate resources to the separatist cause. And Maul is sent to kill gangsters.
Right. The only time Maul is sent to convince someone is because it involves the sentence "or else." So, one other thing I want to ask about this, and then we'll start wrapping up because I know you can't be on too long, is, I think how to best phrase this. In Darth Plagueis especially, you always have the sense that Sidious is very obedient to Plagueis and is following Plagueis' orders, but is, you know, always thinking about the day when he can take control. And in the end of the book, again, forgive spoilers, but he basically reveals how he has never really respected Plagueis and he's been plotting against Plagueis from the beginning. And so, and there's enough of that that's clear in the book that from the beginning, I think you're always, every time Sidious says something to Plagueis, you're always wondering how honest he's being. And certainly there are times where Sidious talks about one day having an apprentice who can help him take over from Plagueis. So going all the way back, we talked about how Sidious says to Plagueis, "Oh, don't worry about Maul. He's not going to be like my apprentice. He's just an assassin." I remember when I first read that book thinking, no, Sidious is actually thinking that Maul might help him take over from Plagueis. And he's just telling Plagueis what he wants to hear. But by the end of the book, and I think also looking at a lot of these other works, it does feel to me like Sidious never thought Maul could be a true Sith apprentice. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. I mean, I think Palpatine doesn't think anybody he has as an apprentice is truly his apprentice until he reveals himself as Sidious. One of the things that I noted in Shadowhunter is that, as I mentioned earlier, the guy hands Palpatine Palpatine's own salvation, essentially.
Right.
And in a way, it reminded me of a piece of advice that I've heard, not directed towards me, but general advice of only break one law at a time. If you have a body in your trunk, don't break the speed limit. If you're a Sith Lord bent on galactic domination and the annihilation of the Jedi, don't also commit petty graft and bribery or have any hint of corruption in your day job as a senator. And so what Palpatine needs when he is a senator is somebody who can just be dirty. He needs to be pristine, except for his connection to whoever his lackey is. And his lackey needs to be as dirty as they come. And so he gets this force-sensitive kid from Dathomir and just warps him into a weapon and is like, great, now I can send you off to do things. You think you have a holy destiny, that you are going to be a part of something great. And that means you'll do anything I need you to. And I do need you to do a lot of things that a lot of people would say no to very quickly, even if they had been brought up in the Sith way. Like, I think Reign, aka Darth Zana under Bane, would have said no to Palpatine a lot more. And like, Vader does push back to Palpatine from time to time, just being like, hey, do we actually have to do this? Like, can you at least give me the reasoning? Whereas Maul is just like, yeah, you say they gotta die, then question is slow or fast.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we literally see Vader like talk to Luke about like, together we can overthrow the Emperor, and you know, and of course he does quite literally overthrow the Emperor at the very end.
But yeah, Maul doesn't think of. I mean, it's because he's treated like a dog, right? He is treated like he doesn't have the possibility of overthrowing Palpatine. And I'm confident that the version of the Sith that Palpatine teaches to Maul is, one day when I say you're ready, I'll give you a test. And when you complete that test, you'll become a Sith master, and then I'll die. And Maul's like, yeah, that math checks out. Whereas anybody who's spoken to Palpatine, or not to Palpatine, but to Sidious for about 10 seconds is like, so that math doesn't check out at all. He's just going to use you, betray you, and then throw you away.
Right. Yeah. No, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. And of course, later we learn that Sidious himself is very confident breaking. Like Sidious doesn't want the rule of two to continue. He wants eternal life and not to be overthrown by an apprentice someday. But that's another story. So I think what we're getting from this is that, like, you know, to me, it's important to understand this, because it's important to understand that by the time this new show begins, all of this is broken. Yeah. Not only is Maul no longer part of that, but he has been quite literally, like we'll talk about this a lot more next week, but there's a point in the Clone Wars where he goes to Sidious with his brother, who he's also trained to use the dark side, and basically kind of tries to rejoin Sidious. And Sidious is like, no, you were never anything. You were just a dog. And, you know, there's that sense of like the most devout followers can often feel the most strongest betrayal. And that's, I think, a lot of what's going to be happening with Maul by the time we get to this new show. As a wrap-up question, although this may take us down some tangents, I'm not sure, but is there any other last things from these books that you think is important for people to know as we get ready to watch the new show that's going to be coming out?
I think I mentioned this previously, but I think the most important thing is to recognize in Maul I am very unlimited brained. Like, all I can do, I'm going to say, think of the aspects of him beyond aggression. Think about his ability to command and his cunning. Like, those are just the words that are in my head, and I cannot think of other words for those that follow.
These are all references to the Star Wars Unlimited card game, for anyone who's wondering what the hell he's talking about.
I've been brainwashed by myself. It's fine. But his aggression is the prominent characteristic in the Phantom Menace, his intimidation, his fear factor. In the Clone Wars, it's a mix of that aggression and also a recklessness, I would say. But in Shadowhunter, we do see a very analytical side of him. He's able to hack Coruscant's security network to figure out where the Jedi and the smuggler are going so that he can cut them off rather than just chasing them all over the city. He's just like, oh, well, the route they're taking to get where they want to go, they're going to have to go through this choke point eventually. Let me just take a speeder bus over there and sit in the choke point rather than chase them down. He's not just a brute. When he's in his element, he is somebody who can think and can connive. However, his element isn't the Senate Rotunda. His element is the Undercity of Coruscant or the Outer Rim, working with the Death Watch or whatever the name of the gang was that was referenced, the Bando Gora, with Black Sun, with the Hutts. Like, those are his people, and he knows how to manipulate those people because he knows what motivates them, which is what motivates him, I think, in a way, which is the same thing that motivates most Sith: freedom and the ability to do what they want. And I think what he wants has changed over time. It's changed dramatically.
And I think a lot of the new show will be about him figuring out what he wants. And seeing where that goes. And I think that's a really good point, because I think, especially the way we've been talking about him, it's easy to kind of think of him as a dummy. And he very much is not. I think, due to the way he's been raised and the way he's been groomed or brainwashed, or however you want to describe it, has very limited fields of thought and is very out of his element in some. But in those areas, he's very cunning and he's very intelligent. You think about, like, I think that word hunter is very appropriate, because you think about, like, animals that are very good at, hunting and stalking prey. Like, there's a real intelligence there in sort of being able to, it's not necessarily what we think of as sentience, but it is still an ability to kind of predict your prey's movements and anticipate them and be there waiting for them. Instead of just blindly chasing them and trying to hit them with a stick.
Have you seen Arcane, the League of Legends show?
I have,
Maul really reminds me of Savika, the, like, Silco's right-hand woman with the artificial arm that's the coolest thing in the world.
Yes, I can see that.
Who then takes over the underworld. Like, she's not the conniver. She would never be able to replace Silco, much like Maul could absolutely never step. God, you know how Senator Jar Jar was jarring for some people? Can you imagine if Maul was like, well, Palpatine got hit in a speeder accident. Guess I'm going to have to step into his shoes. I'm Supreme Chancellor Maul. Like, buddy, you're going to get...
People would figure it out.
Roasted at the first press conference.
Well, and the number of reporters who then get, decapitated with cauterized neck wounds would, I think, be a pretty big clue.
He would not last long in that arena. And similarly, like, Savika, when she's just like, hey, my job is to, like, intimidate these Chem Barons into following me and taking over the city. Oh yeah, I could do that. I could be in charge. I can lead. I just was never given the opportunity, because the only leadership styles I saw were styles that do not match with any of my strengths.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being a part of this. As I said to listeners, send us questions. What else do you want to know about Maul and his role in the Legends books? We're going to be talking soon about the Clone Wars and Rebels. And, well, not Rebels, because that takes place afterwards, but the Clone Wars and the movie Solo, because both of those are kind of part of this conversation, the show The Bad Batch. Let us know what you think. Jonah, can people still find the archives are not complete?
Yeah, the archives are incomplete. Is still up online. I still get spam email being like, hey, we can help promote your podcast that's been on hiatus for 3 years. As soon as I have a minute of free time, I'm getting back to it. I just have like a couple hundred books that I want to read before I get back into just reading Star Wars, and a couple thousand minis that I need to paint before my, like, creative energies on Star Wars are spent. But once those are done, so in a decade or so, I'll definitely be back. I want to get back to it sooner rather than later, but that still exists. And of course, if you're interested in Star Wars Unlimited, I like that game.
Yeah, it's a great game. It's a great judge program if you want to be a part of it. All the ways to contact Jonah will be in the show notes. And of course, all the ways to contact me. If you just go to theethicalpanda.com, you'll find information about this podcast, the Superhero Ethics podcast, where we've just put up an episode. I think it'll be out by the time this episode comes out, or if not, will be coming out shortly afterwards. it's the first of a series that we're going to do, kind of interspersed among other things on superhero ethics, called "What Made You Rebel Scum?" Conversation about what's the media that inspired various people to, kind of look at the world in with some dissatisfaction and want to make it a little bit better. So, Jonah, thank you so much. On behalf of Jonah and myself, to the fans and listeners, thank you all so much. We have spoken.